In this devlog, I'll be showcasing the current moveset of our character. But before we dive into the action, there are a few things I'd like to cover first. Let's begin by breaking down how I achieved the classic PS1 aesthetic. To get the low-res look while maintaining modern resolutions, I output the camera's view to a render texture. That render texture I set to a width of 640 pixels and a height of 360 pixels. I chose these numbers as they divide into 1920 by 1080, maintaining the 16:9 aspect ratio. I also set the filter mode to point. This ensures we get those hard pixels with no smoothing. The PS1 had a 4:3 aspect ratio, and most games ran at a resolution of 640 by 240 pixels. While I'm inspired by the PS1's visual style, I'm not strictly adhering to its hardware limitations. This is about evoking the era's charm, not creating a game that would actually run on a PS1. This render texture is set as a source of a raw image that is part of the UI canvas. I make sure the image's width and height match that of my render texture. I set the canvas to scale with screen size, and I set the reference resolution to match the render texture also. And just like that, we have a low res look with crunchy pixels. The shader I use in all my models is a PSX shader created by Codrin. It's free to use and it offers a fair amount of options to help achieve the PSX aesthetic. I'll leave a link to the GitHub repo down below if you're interested in trying it out for yourself. That's all I do now to achieve this look. In the future, I plan to experiment with backlighting and switch to unlit textures to achieve a more accurate PS1 look. Now, let's get back to the character's moveset. Before we can show off his attacks, he's going to need something to hit. A wooden crate should do the trick. To create the asset, I first jump to A Sprite to create the pixel art texture. I only need a side and a top texture, so I set the canvas to 64 by 32 pixels. If you're interested in pixel art, then you've definitely heard of A Sprite. It's a great piece of inexpensive software designed solely for making pixel art. Most professional pixel artists use it. It took me a while to decide on the design of the crate. Eventually I found something I was happy with and I continued on. For 3D modeling, I use Blender. Blender is amazing. It is free, open source, and has an extremely active community. You can find a bunch of great tutorials on YouTube for just about anything the software can do. I'm not the best at 3D modeling, especially when it comes to character modeling, but I want to get better. As you can see, this model is as simple as can be. The only reason I'm even creating this model and not using a default cube in Unity is so I can edit the UV placement on the texture. Once that was done, I brought it into Unity. When working with pixel art textures in Unity, make sure to change the filter mode to point, no filter, to get the hard pixel look. The last thing I did was create a material using the PSX shader, and voila! Finally, the time has come to showcase the moveset. He can heavy attack, which can then be chained into another heavy attack, which can then be chained into another heavy attack. He can light attack, which can then be chained into another light attack, which can then be chained into another light attack, which then can be chained into another light attack. He can also jump attack, which can then be chained into another jump attack, and then another jump attack, and another. Finally, if the character breaks out into a sprint and then tries to light attack, this dash attack is performed. This moveset will expand in the future, but I want to be cautious not to overdo it. It's easy to get carried away recreating the complex combat systems seen in some of the game's inspirations, but I know from experience that that level of complexity is not sustainable for a solo indie dev. A more complex moveset requires more complex enemies to fight, which requires more complex animations. I want to create a combat system that is simple, yet has some depth. Above all, I want the combat to be fun. That's all the time we have for today. Before I end it, I would like to give a shout out to all the people who commented on my first devlog. It's great to see the engagement with the content and I hope it continues. As always, if you enjoyed this video, then please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you